Lost. He just kind of ran out of ideas. He wasn't able to formulate plans as well as Magnus, and he just couldn't deal with the change of pace of the game. And Jovanka's right, we do open with the king's pawn, 1e4, and that's met by the Sicilian defence by Magnus. Okay, bringing his knight out. This is Magnus's World Championship repertoire from 2018. Okay, the black pawn now pushing forward after white's bishop came
I'm not keen on this bishop moving to that square. It's a very viable opening, but I think it falls into Magnus's advantage. He's going to go into some kind of manoeuvring game. Maybe he'll get the bishop pair. I don't know.
Okay, so this, again, one of the most topical openings in chess. All the top players, all the top grandmasters in the world seem to debate this opening with white's bishop coming out. So I understand that Duda's going into something quite fashionable, but as Jovanka mentions, Magnus is not going to be surprised here at all. So Duda needs to be direct, and he needs to surprise the world champion, get him out of his comfort zone. But as you can see by the speed of moves, Magnus not surprised. And okay, white pushing pawns in the centre, black challenging and doing the same. Both sides, meanwhile, have developed quite naturally. Both sides have castled. Duda, however, at least he's gaining some space in the centre of the board. White has a nice pawn chain pointing towards the centre, and black's knight now occupying a very strong square. So both sides have reason to be happy, but this is still very well-known territory. I've seen dozens and dozens of grandmaster games in this position. White's bishop coming out, just solidifying the centre. White's bishop not so active, just needs to control the central squares. The white pawn chain especially needs to survive if Duda wins this game. And now I'm expecting Magnus to maybe bring his queen out. And a couple of moves here, maybe you can trade a set of pawns first.
Yeah, and that trading the pawns is what Magnus played in his game against Fabiano Caruana from Tata Steel 2022, so very recently. And he's confident because he's doing exactly the same. So I like it when grandmasters believe in their opening choices and what they've played earlier. It kind of shows confidence. Now, in that particular game, white actually defended the bishop with the queen by moving it to the square in front of the rook. So it wasn't the main move, though. The main move is actually to play bishop takes knight, which, again, I'm not so sure about because it does fall into Magnus's goal of getting those long-term advantages. Maybe in this one it would be the bishop pair. And we saw yesterday how great he was with the bishop pair, even in close positions.
Yeah, actually, you're right there, Jovanka. The two wins that Magnus got, both times he obtained the bishop pair. And he's done the same here as well. If you notice, white's light-squared bishop now traded itself off for the black knight. And yes, black has bishops. Currently, the black dark-squared bishop, a bit blocked in, just staring at a wall of white pawns. But long-term, later in the game, that might well become a big, big factor. So Magnus has a reason to be happy. Meanwhile, Duda, he's been slightly slower. He's played quite quickly up to this point, but he's slightly slower than Magnus. But he should have predicted this position because Magnus played it in one of the most important games of his year so far in 2022, just a couple of months ago. So Duda, hopefully he's within his homework. He should certainly have been studying this exact position this morning. OK, meanwhile, now he's retreated one of the white knights to challenge black's strong knight in the centre. And if we see a trade of knights, then we'll go into that manoeuvring phase that Jovanka was talking about. Kind of stylistically, characteristically, that all favours Magnus, though. And Magnus, just ignoring the knight trade, brings his bishop out. We're not following that game anymore, Jovanka.
We're not following that game, and Magnus, well, he's done his signature move, hasn't he, where he's kind of gone into a main line, but around about move 12, he's kind of not gone for the main line anymore. Instead, he's kind of played the second option. So this isn't the most popular move. Usually, black was actually capturing the knight. Now, Duda is maybe on his own, and he's going to be assessing why people played knight takes knight before in the past, and he'll be trying to figure things out.
You figured out Magnus Carlsen's secret. So around move 12 is when he surprises.
Well, it tends to be some kind of thing. Like he'll go into the main line for maybe 7 to 12 moves, and then he'll choose something else. That's very natural, but at the same time, got a little bit of venom.
He did exactly the same in the World Championship match against Nepomniachtchi back in November. He would play the absolute main line, but then, as Jovanka mentions, sometime between move 8 and 12, he'll play something a bit rare, maybe the third most popular move or the fourth most popular move, just because then he can pretty much guarantee that his opponents haven't studied that before. So he lets them get to a playable position, and then he surprises them, and then the psychological blow, the psychological shock, may be even greater for the opponents. And Magnus, for sure, he studied this bishop move before, as Jovanka mentioned, not the most popular move, but it does feel like Duda now is on his own. So he can't rely, Duda, purely on what the computer told him is the best move or what his coaches told him is the best move. Duda is on his own. Just has to be creative now to find a solution. And if we do see a trade of knights, maybe Magnus thinks that favours him in this exact position. Early days, but a tense battle ahead.
Cool. And we see that Lyth, is that the name, from United Kingdom? Adam from Malaysia donated $49. Thank you so much to all of you. And we are hoping to reach our goal of $120,000 to give to UNICEF and their work in Ukraine and around Ukraine. And we only have today to do it. So we're going to need the chess community. We're going to need all of you to help us and donate if you have the possibility to do that. So thank you also to Ben from the US donating $31. Thank you to all of you. Paul from Australia, wow. All over the world, in all of the time zones.
Yeah, it's really touching in a way to know that our audience is worldwide. It is so international,
Yeah.
just everyone coming together all around the world for a common cause. So, yeah, it's really nice to hear.
It really is.
And meanwhile, Magnus did laugh briefly. We're used to seeing that from him, so we won't read too much into it. We said that Magnus laughing actually tends to result in mistakes, but not yesterday. Yesterday, he was laughing quite a lot. He even fell asleep at one point, but he did end up winning the match. So maybe that's just how Magnus reacts, just how he kind of helps himself relax.
Yeah.
And yeah, every player has a different trick. I just relax by trying to not overthink too much, maybe walking around sometimes, but it's hard to walk around in online chess.
Yeah.
And yeah, Magnus refocusing.
Yeah.
Duda spending a long time on this one move.
Yeah, we have been now talking about the opening. So obviously, Jan-Christoph Duda making his move. Are you surprised by this one?
Slightly. There was actually a huge threat in the position. And yeah, I think we have to jump in because it looks like White can actually win a piece right now. It looks like this knight in the middle of the board is just simply trapped after White pushes a pawn forward. There's no escape square for this knight. But Magnus, with his last move, has set up a sneaky counterattack. This knight cannot go anywhere safely. And if your piece in chess in general, OK, we're about to see this. If in chess you find yourself trapped or attacked, you have to counterattack. That's the only way. And Magnus reacted by counterattacking against White's bishop. And this bishop now retreated. I don't think you could have taken this knight off because Black would take your bishop. And it's more important that Black opens up a really nice line towards the White king. So a trade there would only favour Black. And after the White bishop has retreated, suddenly this Black knight, which was trapped, does have one escape route. It can go back in this direction. And this square now safe because the White bishop has been cut off. So a really sneaky move there by Magnus, just flicking in this kind of counterattack against the White bishop, and then only then deciding whether to remove his knight. And wow, he hasn't moved his knight, Jovanka.
You know, he absolutely hasn't moved his knight. He's moved his rook. So he is sacrificing a piece in order to get these two magnificent pawns in the middle of the board and pressure on the pawn. So we have to take a
let's
look
keep
at this.
an eye on the players as well, maybe if we can, while we show this, because is Duda going to be shocked? He looks super calm, but this is a home idea from Magnus. This is some of his home cooking. He's definitely studied this one before. I'm not sure if there are any games. Maybe we can see.
No games.
No game. Brand new position.
But the idea is kind of a little bit familiar because I myself had an idea against this when I was playing with the white pieces against the Greek grandmaster Cotronius.
OK, so the idea, if we rewind just a couple of moves, if White had captured this Black knight, he hasn't done this, Duda, but if he had taken it, White is a whole knight up, but these pawns are simply too scary. And it's not just the fact that the pawns are scary, but Magnus, having studied this with a computer, that's psychologically scary for Duda. He just felt that these two black pawns were too strong. And instead of capturing immediately, he decides to dodge with his queen, getting out of the eye line of the black rook in case things open up, and now reinstating this threat against the knight. Now the knight is actually threatened 3 times by the pawn and by the white queen and rook. So is it time to retreat now? Or is Magnus going to continue trying to kind of use this piece as bait and trying to lure in Duda to accept it in order to open the position up? The problem is you can't really protect this knight anymore. Maybe you have to take a step back with it. But if you take a step back, there will be consequences. I think Duda's idea is to push his pawn forward, attacking the black knight. And if the knight continues retreating, then this pawn might drop. So really interesting struggle right now. Here, black has some compensation for the lost pawn, but is it sufficient? Can Magnus run away with his knight safely, or does he have something else in mind?
Can I tell you, I just took a peek at the lines to see whether the computer was recommending that black move the knight, and the answer is no.
Wow.
The computer is saying, no, it doesn't need to move the knight.
Give up the knight?
Give it up.
And how?
And basically he was saying, you can actually develop the dark square bishop, relocate it to a different diagonal in anticipation of white playing pawn takes knight. Another move is maybe to put pressure on white's pawn center by sliding the queen one square over to the left.
Now?
Yeah, no, as an alternative to developing the remanoeuvring the bishop.
This position.
And finally, another move is actually to basically push the pawn forward on the Alistair A pawn, move her 2 squares, something. But that's not really looked well upon. So instead, the computer says best moves, slide the queen over, or remaneuver the bishop.
OK, and both of these are incredibly difficult to find. That's why Magnus has stopped right now for 2 minutes. His first real think of the game. He's either going to line his queen up with the white king, which is very mysterious, but after pawn takes knight, black does have options, for example, of capturing this white pawn in the centre, because this pawn in the middle is pinned. Remember, it cannot move due to this queen's eye line against the white king, and therefore the pawn can be up for grabs. And this gets really, really complicated. I'm not sure exactly what the idea is, to be honest. It looks very inhuman to me. It's the type of thing computers suggest. This one looks very tempting, but it depends on the follow-up. White's about to capture the black knight, and the question is whether black can continue taking in the centre and maybe just going for some attack very shortly against the white king, just trying to target the white monarch here. I guess the idea maybe is that if white takes this pawn, white is a whole piece up, then black will just block, threatening the white queen, and when the queen retreats, the attack continues. And this is going to be just fireworks on the board if it happens. If Magnus keeps his knight in the centre, it's just going to explode into life, this game.
Yeah.
Let's hope he does that, because the alternative, retreating with the knight, maybe just not as good there.
Magnus surprising us at every turn, because yesterday we were surprised by his moves, and now we're surprised by his actual strategy. He's actually gone really hard in the opening, and he's taking big risks, and he's playing very confidently. He's kind of saying, hey, I got this under control. I'm going to play as fast, as furiously as I can, and let's see whether you, Jan-Christoph, can deal with my activity. Exciting stuff.
Ooh. Is it simply a sign of confidence and also that he's really enjoying this?
I think so. Magnus loves playing the top players in the world. He loves testing himself. He loves beating them, of course, and he loves doing that in as kind of emphatic a way as possible. He wants to show them who's boss time after time. And in this game, remember, a draw is actually a fantastic result for Magnus with black. He's leading already in the match. But as Jovanka mentions, he's going hard. He's taking big risks. And I think this is instructive for everyone at home as well. If you just want a draw, if you're playing a very strong opponent, don't just play passively. Eventually, those negative decisions will impact your game. Your opponent will gain confidence. They'll see you're a bit scared, and they'll eventually find a way to outplay you or beat you. And the best way to actually get a draw, he does retreat his knight. The best way to get a draw is often to play hard, to go for the attack. Later on, you can give a perpetual check. Later on, your opponent might be the one taking the negative decisions. And OK, we are a bit disappointed to see black's knight retreat, but I think the other moves, unless you studied them before, just very difficult to play.
Yeah. And, well, David, the idea that you mentioned, wow.
OK.
We thought the knight was going to go backwards. But like you say, it's been offered up again as a sacrifice for opening up those lines. And now the position, it's going crazy again.
Yeah, and we mentioned sacrificing that knight. Magnus sacrificed it, but he lost 2 moves in the process as well. And he did that simply to force white to push the white h-pawn forward 2 squares, hoping that the white king is maybe more loose now, lacks pawn shelter. And this is just... I mean, how does he come up with this stuff, Magnus Carlsen, giving the opponent 2 moves for free in order to force him to take the knight? Duda, remember, he had rejected the first gift. He didn't take the knight the first time. He could have done. And now Magnus has really forced him to. If that knight wasn't captured on the last turn, the knight would have jumped towards the white king. So, OK, really interesting. And now Duda's problem is if the white queen steps up 2 squares and captures this black pawn in the middle of the board, black's light squared bishop will come and block, forcing the queen away, and then black's remaining pawn will start advancing towards the king. And actually, the white king has no protection around it, no pieces.
Yeah.
The white knights are on the wrong side of the board.
Yeah, totally. I mean, just look at those pieces on the left, you know, in the words of Mikhail Tal, sleeping.
Yeah.
So they are not awakened, and whilst you can do that, you should strike while the iron is hot. So an insane game already. And whilst we're waiting for Jan Christoph to think about what he's going to play, we have a few selfies that I'd love to share with you. And one from Abhishek, who said yesterday was this his son's five-year-old guy's first day at school. I promised to play chess with him every day and post his selfie too, and only then did he agree to go to school. Today's kids know all the tricks.
Ah.
That is true. They know it on and off the chessboard. I have to say that. So a nice picture.
And those are some very cool sunglasses, I have to say.
They are very cool, yeah. And Jon Frederick Torp sends us greetings from Mexico, and he's rooting for Magnus Carlsen, of course.
Ooh, but he should have used the burrito emoji. Oh, did it?
I think, wow, look at the evaluation bar, just shot up in black's favour. Duda could not stand the tension. He took this pawn. We literally just said he couldn't do this. And Duda's shaking his head. He's realising this is a huge mistake because black, I think, has got a winning attack. And Magnus just instantly blocking this threat of the queen trade with his bishop. We have to jump into the position. Let's keep an eye because we might see a huge reaction. The black bishop actually jumped in the way. Black could have also pushed a pawn, but black's bishop has jumped in the way, and now the queen retreats. It's all about this guy. This guy is going to be a battering ram, opening up the white king. Magnus is surely going to throw this pawn forward, and how is this king ever going to survive? I don't think it will. For example, this pawn, it's actually threatening to move down the board with another check, hitting the white king, hitting the white rook. You have to stop its advance. You either trade it off. OK, Magnus has played this move. You have to trade it off, but then allowing the black rook into your position, attacking the white queen, and when the white queen moves, this is going to be a deadly check. I think this just ends in checkmate. White's king is doomed. The only one I can think of to survive here, Jovanka, is using the white bishop to stop the advance of this pawn. But then after a simple pawn takes pawn, now the black rook is indeed coming in. It's going to slide down and across and round, and it's going to trap this white king. This white king simply has no defenders. And, I mean, it looks like a very simple plan here, but it does take 3 moves. So Duda, his last remaining hope is to bring his knights across to the defence. It's not looking easy. Even if you bring your knight across to stop the black rook using the square, the black queen can attack maybe. She can slide across, coming in, threatening checkmate. It just looks hopeless. This black pawn is just paralysing the white king and looks already winning for the world champion.
Wow.
Yeah, it does look really, really bad. But OK, we have to be really concrete about this because, you know, if white is able to kind of plan some kind of defence, you know, the king can sit there in the corner, sing Gloria Gaynor's famous tune, I Will Survive. I was inspired by David's The King Will Survive. And, you know, OK, so, I mean, it really is on a threat-by-threat basis. And like David's highlighted in that particular position, the queen is coming in, so you have to defend that. That's the only move you can make, so you have to step back with the bishop. And it is horrible and...
just to cover the square.
It is terrible position. It looks so scary. And all Magnus has to do is just carry on building, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, he can bring his queen into the attack. He can maybe lift his rook forward, line up the other rook behind it. And, yeah, this bishop in the centre of the board is just a monster. We talked earlier about giving the bishop pair to Magnus. This bishop is just the key piece. It keeps an eye on all the light squares, keeps this pawn alive forever. And I don't think Duda's really going to survive, as Jovanka mentions there, because it just looks too scary. And he's also shaking his head, Duda, hand over his face right now. That's always a bad sign, body language-wise. If a chess player's got their hand over their head like that, it means they hate their position. They don't even want to look at the board. And in the current position, it does feel that way. Duda, lower on the clock as well. He's in huge trouble right now.
It's a
I
major
have a question
crisis
for you about this particular... So you played at this position. Say, let's pretend that we're all Jan Christoph Duda. Would you be angry with yourself or would you be furious? I mean, what I meant is, like, would you be sad? I got the question right. Would you be sad or furious is what I wanted to ask. And I ended up saying...
I would just be shocked. I mean, how often... are you lost with white in 20 moves?
Yeah.
As a world-class player, that's just...
Because it's down to Magnus Carlsen's just...
Genius.
Would you call it genius, yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, we'll show it again a bit later on in action replay, but that knight sacrifice... OK, white, meanwhile, bring the bishop across to stop the advance of this black pawn. But that knight sacrifice, maybe we can show it now just because it was just so incredible. We saw white attacking this black knight. It retreated, the white pawn stepped forward, and now this knight simply came back to the centre of the board. Magnus just losing 2 moves, but the whole reason is now he has a safe square for the knight. Therefore, the knight cannot be allowed to live, and after pawn takes pawn, as we showed, this is the game. Duda here blundering by taking this pawn. It was a very natural blunder. We can't blame him for it, but just that psychological shock, he's not recovering. Actually, I think Magnus could have won on the spot by pushing this pawn forward even stronger. But OK, this bishop move, and if we fast forward to the current position, this one, Magnus, all he needs to do, as we showed, is play pawn takes pawn and big attack. He could maybe even start with this queen move first. Just trying to use the queen on this diagonal also looks pretty good.
Actually, that looks really good.
I mean, the whole position just looks very good for Magnus right now. A few very tempting options, bringing the queen into the attack or capturing this pawn, maybe even alternatives there as well. And yeah, let's go back to the players. Duda, he's on the brink. This final might be a very short one, unless he can miraculously save this game now.
Yeah, because Magnus just seems unconfident as well. It doesn't seem like he will make a blunder at any point.
No, not when he's playing like this.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the thing, you know, and yesterday as well, when we see how Magnus played, it really was a world champion demonstrating his magnificence. And when we can kind of compare his play over the last few days, we see him just getting better and better and better. It's like he's playing himself into the best form of his life. And yeah, I'm hats off to the world champion so far. It's been a fantastic opening.
Wow.
And well, he has to finish it off now. And this is the thing.
Yeah, but I mean, what you've seen from Magnus so far in this final, yesterday and today, is it some of the best we've seen from him?
I mean, the last time I saw Magnus looking this good was maybe at the beginning of 2019. So just after his match against Fabiano Caruana. OK, he does play pawn takes pawn, very natural move, opening up lines for the black pieces. But yeah, the last time I saw him was when he was, OK, firstly using that preparation from the match against Caruana, but also when he was inspired by AlphaZero, this AI program. And Magnus said that inspired him to start pushing pawns forward, to taking risks, long-term strategic sacrifices, just like the one he's played now. And yeah, just something about Magnus's play, just it's so powerful, it's so energetic, and he doesn't always show it. As Jovanka mentioned, he is a slow starter in events, normally taking a few days to warm up. But I mean, Duda, he's a World Cup winner. He's only 23. He's one of the best in the world already, and Magnus is making him look just quite ordinary at the moment.
And he should be in great shape as well, right? Probably doing training camps before the candidates, playing a lot of chess.
Exactly. Yeah. Duda's, I mean, you've got to be in great shape to get to the final of one of these events.
Absolutely.
But there's one big difference. Magnus can be very open about his opening choices, whereas Duda has to actually play hiding his preparation because he has to leave the best for the candidate match. I mean, you don't want to use, okay, it's a terrible analogy, but Garry Kasparov used this when he defeated some a very strong grandmaster, actually, using some amazing analysis, and he later described it very kind of condescendingly, you know, just using a machine gun to swat a fly. And this is the thing with Duda. Duda doesn't want to use all that preparation for this type of game.
Yeah.
He wants it to be in the killer moment, in a crunch time. Then he will come with some fantastic analysis.
Yeah.
And Duda actually mentioned it in his interview yesterday, right? He was not playing his mainstream openings, his main kind of favourite lines, because he is hiding them. And yeah, we just see the evaluation bar slightly shuffling side to side. I think it's going to recorrect itself and go black in black's favour, but that just shows the computer even is struggling to see the depth of Magnus's idea. The computer that we're using, Stockfish, it does have a certain horizon. So yeah, after a while, it was slightly edged back towards black. But meanwhile, Magnus, again, playing one of the other ideas we mentioned, bringing the queen across. There's a devastating threat, the black queen. If it lands on the h3 square in the corner, it's just going to come down and deliver checkmate, using the pawn next to it. And, I mean, it's so hard to stop that. I think Jovanka's right. The white bishop has to move, but where? White's bishop has to just jump out the way so that the white queen can cover the third rank. There's not many safe squares for that bishop, though, and he does retreat it. And
this was not the square, apparently, because I just peeked at the computer. That was a bit bad and naughty of me. But the bishop had to step forward, because I assumed, you know, it could just step backwards. And actually, this is not good.
Okay.
And the reason why is because the bishop needed to maintain his presence on the diagonal.
Okay.
Otherwise, black will put his bishop on the h6 square.
Wow, OK, so let's jump in. Duda once again shaking his head, as we saw just then. And Jovanka's mentioning that in this position, the bishop actually just retreated, but it needed to advance and step to this square. This is not obvious because it looks like the bishop is about to get trapped. And, yeah, no escape squares for it now, unless you go back where you came from. So very naturally, Duda has retreated his bishop. And you're saying here, Jovanka, now black can use this diagonal for his piece. And suddenly this block of wood, which was doing nothing, staring at white pawns, it's coming to life. It might remove a key defender. It might even kind of zigzag towards the white king in a moment.
Yeah.
And this looks very scary as well. All of black's pieces are arriving to the party, and white's pieces didn't get an invite. This rook didn't get invited. This knight didn't get invited either. And white is essentially playing without those two pieces. But whoa, Magnus sacrificing his rook. Is this continued genius? Because he's just given his rook up, and after the knight, yeah, this one's risky though. You're giving up so many pieces. After the rook disappears, his idea is to jump in with his queen, threatening this checkmate. The whole reason he gave up the rook was to block this line so the white queen can't defend. But can you run away? Can you move your bishop out the way in order to create an escape square for the white king? This one is really tense. From Duda's body language, he thinks he's losing. Magnus thinks he's winning, but the evaluation bar says no. The computer making a mockery of us all. Maybe the white bishop can move. I'm trying to decide where. You have to go this way or this way. I'm not sure which one. Maybe this way. And yes, you give up your bishop, but you do create an escape square for your king. Magnus is a rook and a knight down. So if he survives, Duda, then he has a material advantage. I think Magnus just trying to be too flashy there. I like Jovanka's simple approach. Just bring another piece into the game. Later, the attack for sure will work. You just got to time it correctly. Instead, Magnus going for the attack now, but it might rebound. It might backfire. The knight can safely take this rook. And after the black queen jumps in, the white bishop is going to move. And whoa, OK, Duda panicking. He gives up his queen, but this is not going to save the game. After the queen is captured, he's a whole queen down and he's facing a withering attack. This is going to threaten checkmate, and the black queen attacking the white knight. This one is just going to be game over. The white knight has to retreat now and block. But Jovanka, it's time for your maneuver.
Yeah.
Bring the bishop in.
Bring the bishop in, and it's going. That's really deadly. There's nothing to be done, actually.
A queen is always better than no queen, and here Magnus has the queen and the attack. Let's go back to the players. Magnus about to win, and we can't blame Duda there. Maybe he had a narrow path to defend, but he's been under pressure this whole game. Magnus about to finish this one off.
Yeah, and one thing that we should really point out is that we have access to the computer. And look, Magnus, he knows he has to invite everyone to the party, and the bishop is coming into the f4 square with deadly effect. Because one of the things is that, you know, these days, with the advance of technology, we can sit there and we can look, and the computer can work it all out for us, and it can see the bar, it can see everything. So we have some extra information the players don't have. And the position was wild, and what to say, I agree. I mean, it's very easy to panic in these type of situations. And Magnus, he's relentless. Look at him, you know, he's determined to put that bishop on the killer f4 square.
Yeah, and that black rook was the only piece not attacking. Now it is attacking, not just bringing the bishop in, also black's rook trying to get rid of white's bishop. White's king is overworked, defending two pieces. Yeah, like Jovanka said, just having access even just to the evaluation bar is essential for us. We saw that black's attack was very strong, but then just for one move, Duda could have survived, but he doesn't know that. He would have been feeling that black's attack was strong the whole time, and that's why he's been shaking his head. He didn't look for the resources, the defensive resources, because he didn't know they were there. We knew that they were there because of the evaluation bar, and now, OK, he's bringing his rook across, but he's shaking his head. He knows that this game is pretty much gone. Black has, I mean, so many winning moves now. Two of them would include bringing the black bishop in to attack that white knight in the corner, and the other one maybe using the black rook, taking the white bishop off. Take the
bishop off. That to me is looks good. Is there anything to...
I mean, that looks good as well.
I mean, the only thing that I can see is that white could block the rook, block the pawn, is what I want to say. OK,
just to show this one, because there are a couple of variations here. The moves we're looking for black, two killer moves here, bring the bishop in, attacking this white knight. And this white knight, remember, cannot move. If it jumps out the way, then this ends in checkmate. So here you have to get rid of this bishop. White will have to take. But if we do a quick material count, black has a queen for 3 white pieces, for white's knight and bishop. But although 3 pieces is the same value as a queen, white is just doomed here. The white king is just too much of a target, has no pawns around it to protect, and black still has an attack threatening to take this bishop, for example. So this would win for Magnus. He's just working out whether that is simpler than capturing the white bishop. This is another path to victory, because after the king takes, suddenly the knight has no protection, and black is threatening to make another queen with a discover check. White has to block, but again, the king is too open, and we actually have this position on the board now. Among the winning moves would be maybe stepping back with the black queen, just because you have the killer threat of jumping back with a check and with a double attack. White's king cannot save its two rooks. It feels like White's position is just too loose here. I think he has actually played this killer threat of queen check, winning the white rook. No way to survive now. If you step back with the rook, for example, the bishop can start coming in, and this is going to be game over soon. Pawns are dropping. It's just too open now, the white king. Magnus on the brink of a victory.
Wow.
Yeah, incredible game by Magnus, and all due to the opening. Wow.
Yeah, and some fantastic play by Magnus Carlsen. Now, if Magnus wins this, he could actually decide the final in the next game if he wins that as well. So we might not have too much time left in our fundraising. So if you do have the opportunity to donate to UNICEF, then now is the time, and you can see the information on the bottom of the screen. Thank you to everyone that is donating. And we have some moves.
Yeah, and what a move. Look at Magnus's full board awareness. He's been attacking the white king the whole time, and then just quietly, suddenly, he switches his attentions to the other side of the board. And look at this black pawn. It's just marching down to dislodge the white knight. White's knight looks like it's an innocent bystander, not doing anything, but it is defending white's central pawns. And, OK, after black's pawn disappears, the black pawn dislodging the knight will end in all of white's pawns now falling off the board. The white knight has to move away, and then black's going to step up with the black queen, capture one pawn with a check. We're going to see this in action, actually. Black's going to take one pawn with check, then black's queen is next after the white king moves, going to grab white's central pawn, and just like dominoes, they're all falling. It's actually virtually level material right now. Black's queen kind of balancing out the two white rooks, but the black queen's so much more powerful than white's pieces, and there we go. Another pawn falls. Black's queen attacking two pawns now. One of those other pawns will fall. It's just kind of a cleaning up job here, as they say. It's still slightly messy, so you just got to clean things up, take off all your opponent's pawns, and slowly but surely it's a win for black.
Yeah, and I mean, not only does black have extra material, but also when you judge these type of positions with rooks against queens, then you also have to judge king safety. So if either side has an unsafe king, then it means that you're vulnerable. And take a look at white's king out in the open. Oh, and another pawn fell. Bad news. Yeah. Even bad news for
Duda.
Duda. It just keeps coming. I mean, but he is trying, you know. He is also reminding Magnus that black also has an unsafe king if given the opportunity. But Magnus is relentless. He's centralizing the queen. Best square for such a piece.
Centre of the board is always good for queens. Just look how many squares this queen controls. White's rooks cannot actually kick her off using the central line, because the d2 square that the white rooks both want to use to attack the black queen is actually covered by black's bishop. So this is also a good strategy. A queen on light squares, a bishop on dark squares. Together, they just control the whole board. And white does have one check. White's rook can come up to the top of the board, checking the black king. But the black king is hiding safely behind its own pawns. It'll just move off the back rank and nothing else to do. White has run out of pawns here, simply. It's 5 pawns versus 2. And slowly but surely, as mentioned, black's pawns are going to march down this side, maybe march down the other side of the board. The white rooks eventually will be overstretched. And Duda is looking that far into the future. He sees long-term, he's got no chance. So unless there's a trick now, starting with a check, then yeah, he might even throw in the towel and resign this game. Yeah. But OK, that check simply met by a king advance. What else can he try? Maybe the white rook can come down to the 7th rank, try to attack some pawns. But that can be easily defended as well by Magnus.
Also running out of time here, Duda.
Yeah, running out of time, he improves the white king, but now the white knight is pinned. This is the problem. No matter where you put the white king, there are downsides. The white knight now stuck because black's queen on a nice diagonal, and it's time for Magnus's pawns to start rolling. Maybe he'll improve the black bishop first.
Yeah.
Spoil for choice.
Totally. I mean, I would be tempting just to push my b-pawn, push it up 2 squares, and then threaten to promote Alice into a lovely new queen.
Yeah.
looks like on his body language he is getting ready to resign, though, Jan Christoph Duda, and that will be dramatic. Now remember, we also have the auction that will be finished today. This unique signed chessboard by world champion Magnus Carlsen is up for grabs. Current bid $4,000, and well, not a lot of time left to make your bid. And remember, there's also a signed Airthings device by Magnus Carlsen on that auction site, cctauction.com. Current bid on that one, $375. Both of them signed by the player who could be about to win the Charity Cup.
Yeah, and a really sadistic move here from Magnus, just putting his queen into the centre once again, but a massive threat. The queen's threatening to slide across 2 squares, checking the white king, but also hitting that undefended white rook at the top of the board. Queens are so versatile. They just have such good eyesight, just looking at all the pieces all over the board. And it's going to be hard for Jan Christoph Duda to keep his pieces defended, keep his king safe. I mean, that's not even mentioning the advance of black's pawns that is incoming. I mean, yeah, there's not much to say here, unfortunately. White's rook at the top of the board has to find a safe square. It's loose. You can't have undefended pieces when your opponent has a queen. So you have to keep it on a protected square somewhere, but retreating it the whole way back down, being passive, that just gives black all the time in the world to advance the pawns. Okay, he defends his rook this way. The rook's teaming up at least, but this check forces the white king onto a dark square, and black has that dark squared bishop. The queen and bishop teaming up.
Yeah, and now it's the knight that is a target. It's got a mark on his back, and well, his plan is simply just to start giving the white king a few checks, and here it comes. The king is forced to take a step backwards, but yet another pawn is up for grabs.
Yeah, if Magnus wants to be really greedy, the white pawn in the centre of the board can just be captured by the black bishop, and there we go. They are falling. I mentioned dominoes. Those dominoes have completely toppled over. White only has 1 pawn remaining. Black has 5 pawns. And queen versus 2 rooks, as we mentioned, roughly balanced. It's all about the pawns now and the open white king. It's not just having the pawns. It's look how safe black's king is behind its pawns. Look how white is lacking shelter. And have we seen it there?
Yep.
I think Duda has resigned.
It's over. Magnus Carlsen wins game 1 in the second match here in the final, and that's super dramatic for Jan Christoph Duda. He now has to